Good morning, Rabbi. Welcome to Breakfast in the Class. Breakfast in the Class today is sponsored and dedicated loving memory of Soul Abadi Alav Shalom Shlomo ben Naomi, sponsored by his friend Ralph Batesh. Chazak Baruch. Breakfast in the Class also dedicated in honor and in celebration of the birthday of Noam Berger, a big fan of Breakfast in the Class and who's currently serving in the IDF as a commander of Hesder Yeshiva soldiers in the Givati combat unit. Chazak Baruch, Hashem Yishmireu v'Yahayeu. Hashem should keep him and guard him and protect him and bring him back in good health. By Daniel and Raquel Berger. Be'ezrat Hashem, we should see only semachot. Breakfast in the Class dedicated also for the Refuah Shlema Binyamin ben Sultana, sponsored anonymously, and as well dedicated in loving memory of Sharon Batesh, Alav Shalom Shmat Sharon Bat Sarah, sponsored by Stephen and Rebecca Batesh. Finally, what's it called? We also have the Week of Kobru sponsored by James Haddad in honor of Rabbi Farhi's legendary dance moves on full display at the Syed Haddad wedding. James, I'm just going to say this, it takes one to know one. If you think my moves are legendary, you need to see the video watching your own moves. Chazak Baruch. Okay, let's begin. This week's parasha in Bechukotai, it talks about the berachot and the kilalot, the blessings and the curses that face the Jewish people when either they listen to Borei Olam's commandments, where they do the right thing, or Bar Minan, when unfortunately we don't do the right thing, the consequences that come from the reality of our disconnection from God. Not doing mitzvot, not doing following the ways of Torah, that severs in a certain way, or pushes away, or makes our connection with God a little bit more distant. We put a wall between us and Him. And if God is the source of beracha, and we've pushed ourselves away from that, then we are now, alienated from the source of our berachot. So the Torah tells us at that point, there's an idea that the land will spit out its inhabitants. Right? That Eretz Israel literally uses the word lahaki, which means to almost vomit. It vomits out its inhabitants. We become so much of persona non grata to the land of Israel that it can't bear to have us anymore, and it shoves us out into exile. Now, my friends, I always felt this was so interesting. We read in the Gemara tells us, why is it, what caused the galut from Eretz Israel, from the Beit HaMikdash? We know in the first Beit HaMikdash, what were the Jewish people guilty of? The three major sins. The second Beit HaMikdash, what were they guilty of? They were guilty of Sinat Chinam. But the Navi actually asks a question. The Navi says, Alma Avda Haaretz. Why was the land Eretz Israel, why was it destroyed? Al Ozvam et Torati, because they abandoned my Torah. Says the Gemara, what do those words mean? Al Ozvam et Torati, that they abandoned my Torah. It says, Al Shelo Berechu Torah Techila, because they did not make the beracha that we make before you read Pisukim or words of Torah. Every morning we have at the end of the berachot, we thank God for sight, for the ability to walk, for clothing, etc., etc. And then what happens at the end over there? We say, Shir b'havanim kol amim, v'harevna, and make the Torah sweet. All those are called the berachot Torah. The Jewish people were not doing the beracha of Torah, and therefore, right? They abandoned my Torah. That's what God says. Now, there's a very famous idea. And the idea goes, means that the idea that they didn't respect the Torah, that they didn't cherish the Torah, that they didn't feel it was worthy of making a beracha over, was enough to make it considered as if ozvam et torati, they left my Torah. That means, were they studying Torah? Absolutely. Did they know more Torah than you and me? Probably. And yet God considered it as if there was no Torah at all amongst the Jewish people. Why? Because they didn't make a beracha. But why did they make the beracha? And the answer is because they didn't appreciate it. Asks the Rav Yitzchak Blazer, asks an incredible question. He says, I don't understand. Since when is the punishment for not making Birkat Torah exile? The death of millions, right, happened when the Jewish people were forced out. in the exile from the temple. Where does it say in the Torah? Thou shalt bless the Torah first, and if you don't do it, I'm going to kill you all. I'm going to drive you all into exile. Where does it say that? And he answers something incredible, which I think pays dividends across all of our Jewish practice. He says, Habaz ledavar yehaveh lo. What does that mean? A person treats something without the proper respect. You don't elevate that thing. Habaz ledavar yehaveh lo. That thing will come back to hurt him. The example brought in the Gemara is the example of Shaul and David. When Shaul was chasing after David at the end of his life, Shaul became almost possessed by Ruach Ra'ah, and he wanted to kill David. He thought David would present the single greatest threat to his line of the kingdom. And by the way, he was right. He's chasing David to kill him. David is running away from Shaul. He goes into a cave. The cover of the cave is covered over by a big spider web. Shaul and his men pass by. They want to check in the cave, but they see the spider web is there. They realize that if anyone would have went through, they would have broken the web. Therefore, there must not be anyone in there. Meanwhile, God had caused the spider to weave the web very quickly. So even though David had just gone in, it looked like a web that would have taken a very long time to complete. In the middle of the night, Shaul and his people, they set up camp. David sneaks out. He takes a knife. He cuts off the corner of Shaul's beged. And then he sends Shaul a message saying, is this the corner of your cloak? I was there in your camp last night. If I had any ill will towards you, if I wanted to kill you, I would have killed you. This is ridiculous. Let's stop this. So David sent a message to Shaul. Says the Gemara something that could give you goosebumps. Habaz ledavar yehaveh lo. We read in the beginning of the new Sefer, and David was old, beginning of Melachim, and David was old, and he was freezing, and nothing could warm him up, and his clothing, says the Pasuk, would not keep him warm. Why? Habaz ledavar, you treat something without respect, yechavel lo, it comes back to haunt you, to hurt you. You didn't show clothing respect, clothing will hurt you. Rav Yitzchak Blazer explains, he says, what's the idea here? He says, God gave in each thing, in each element of creation, He planted that thing's purpose and that thing's power. So as an example, it is within the power, the remit of clothing to keep someone warm. It's within the remit of food to get someone to feel full, to satiate them, to give them the minerals and nutrients that they need. It's in the properties of water to slake someone's thirst, to allow the person to be able to feel hydrated. All of those qualities were imbued in all the many things in creation. Right? However, when a person disrespects something, or he doesn't show it the proper kavod, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, okay, you don't respect, you're not grateful, you're not recognizing of the value of this thing, no problem. I'm going to take the value away from the thing. Habaz ledavar yichavelo. Rav Blazer asks an amazing question. He says, we know that when a person studies Torah, the Gemara says, Torah magina umatzla. It protects and it saves. And the Gemara has a whole discussion. Does it protect and does it save even when you're not studying Torah? In other words, we study today, now you go to work, but now you're not learning Torah. Does it protect you and save you after the fact? Or does it only protect you and save you during the fact? The Gemara has a disagreement, but everyone agrees that at the time of the Torah study, Magina u'Matzla. Says Rav Yitzchak Blazer, I don't understand. We know that the Jews, even if they had not made Beracha Techila, the Torah should have saved them. And what does it mean, magina u'matzla? It means it saves you from the yetzer hara. We mentioned this before. A person has yetzer hara, drag him to the Bet Midrash. The person is learning Torah. The Torah itself saves him from his yetzer hara. Okay? Now this, my friends, this is so powerful. Asks Rav Blazer, he says, I don't understand. Whatever yetzer hara caused them to do the berachot, caused them, to do the 3 big sins. Whatever yetzer hara caused them to do sinat chinam. If we know that they were studying Torah at that time, the Torah should have saved them from the yetzer hara. Why didn't their Torah work? The answer is based on this concept. He says, because if they didn't appreciate it to the point where we weren't making a beracha, habaz ledavar yichavelo, its power is sapped. It's drawn away. So therefore they were not saved because of it. The Torah itself had lost its protective power because they didn't appreciate the value of the Torah that they had. We say every day, Ahavat olam ahavtanu. A eternal love, Hashem, you loved us. And what is the eternal love that God had in loving us? It's the fact that He gave us the Torah. And we ask God, in that beracha, we say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please, give us the strength and the ability to be able to shmor, la'asot, right, to do, to keep, to practice, l'mod, lamed, right, to do, to teach. Now, what's interesting is if a person's paying attention, you realize that you can have Torah. But the only way to have Torah is to preface Torah with a recognition that it is something so special, that this is the way that an infinite being who wanted to love his people, what did he do? What did he get them? He got them Torah. If you could recognize the level, the magnitude of the gift of what Torah is, then the Torah that you learn comes alive. That's why in the beracha of Birkat Torah we ask Hashem, v'harevna, make it sweet for us. It's not enough for us to say to God, just let me know it all. Why do you want it to be sweet? So that you'll learn, so that you'll know, so that you'll practice. Just ask God. You don't even need to make it sweet. Just ask God to help you learn, to help you. The answer is, even if you learned, even if you retained, even if you kept it, even if you taught it to other people, it still wouldn't matter if you didn't love it. Ve'avta, and you shall love Hashem your God. We could talk about keeping it, passing on to your children after we've talked about love. So my friends, we learn from here a tremendous idea. The sigulot that we find in Torah, in tzedakah, in the ma'asim tovim that we do, they come only when a person has a recognition of what is special, the value of the mitzvah that they're doing. But I'm learning from here something in many ways that is broader even than that. My friends, what does a marriage give a person? What do you get from it? You get love, you get support. What does it give you? It brings you these berachot. What does it give you? It gives you a lot of special things. If a person does not respect his marriage, if a person does not respect his wife, if a wife does not respect her husband, then he could be the best husband in the world. She could be the best wife in the world. They could have the best marriage in the world. He will not get the feelings that marriage bring. If you don't respect your children, if you don't have appreciation and gratitude to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the gift that they are, then the thing that you get from children, HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes it away. So the value and what we get from the things in our life is completely dependent upon, are you appreciating that thing? Or is it baz le davar yechavelo? Did you let your appreciation slip? Are you not noticing how special it is? The minute that occurs, everything special that comes from that thing stops emanating from that thing. Food loses its taste. It loses its ability to excite. Drink, etc., same thing, won't quench your thirst. Money, you see people at a certain stage, they lose their gratitude for the riches that they have because they took it for granted. Now, and my friends, the fact that once upon a time they could buy something and it filled and made them so happy and they could enjoy, it loses its time. They had the nicest clothes and the nicest car, they're going to the nicest place to eat, and they just feel like they're eating dust. And they live a life with no joy. And on a surface, people think, oh, it's just because you didn't appreciate it, so you're not noticing it. That's not the mechanics. The mechanics are, if you didn't appreciate it, God removes the joy of those things from those things. Because you don't deserve to have them. You don't deserve to have them. So my friends, every person in this world has a different set of blessings. Some people have a beautiful family, a beautiful marriage. Some people have children, some people don't. People are not married. Some people have a great business, some people don't. Some people have amazing health, some people don't. Some people have great friends, some people don't. Some people live a meaningful life, and some people don't. There's 1,000,001 blessings that live in the lives of each and every person on the face of this earth. But if they're not appreciative of those blessings, then they don't get any of them, even if they have them. Think of the fact that in a physical reality, clothes keep you warm. But God says to David HaMelech, nope. Doesn't matter how many blankets you're going to cover yourself with. If you could disrespect clothing the way that you did, on David HaMelech's level, obviously. For me and you, what do you mean? He was just sending Shaul a message, trying to save his life. For David HaMelech, there was another way, a better way to do it, obviously. Hashem takes the natural ability from it. And sometimes I think, people say they're confused. I don't understand, Rabbi. I should be so happy. I should be so, I'll tell you, I'll be the first person to tell you. I'm blessed but I feel they can't understand. The answer is, you're right, it's illogical. But this is what the Torah is telling us here. You didn't respect the Torah doesn't have its meginah, its protective power. You didn't respect the mitzvah of tzedakah, you didn't do it with your heart, you didn't enjoy it, then tzedakah tatzil mimavet doesn't work. Because God shuts off the lights. So on a certain level, my friends, I feel that this concept, approaching life with a respectful mindset, to respect each part and each person and each element of the lives that we live, actually is what brings us to life in and of itself. It perhaps is one of the most important things that we could focus on. May Hashem bless us, Be'ezrat Hashem, to live lives full of beracha, but even more importantly, to notice those berachot. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen.